Amnesia, Machine for Pigs is a follow-up to the survival horror game of the same prefix, Amnesia: The Dark Descent. It was developed by the Chinese Room, the studio that had created Dear Esther. The game starts you off in a mansion, climbing out of a cage. When your consciousness returns, you are tasked with finding your children, as you notice them running away when you exit the room. Similar to the first Amnesia game, not a whole lot happens for the first while in the experience. A Machine for Pigs attempts to slowly build up tension by throwing slight jump scares at you while you explore the location. An important thing to make note of is the fact that they had removed the inventory and the need to refill your lantern with oil. The logic behind this change is to immerse you further into the environments by removing any need to go through menus. While this is a nice change, I feel that it hampered the potential for puzzles, as instead of holding objects in your inventory, you must carry them from their original location to where you must use them. This system doesn't allow you to hold onto items for too long, and it typically makes for obvious puzzles. Also, having infinite oil for the lantern felt a tad silly, both logically and in a game sense. There was simply no reason to not have it on at all times. I feel the game would have been much more fun if I was required to manage the times in which I should use my lantern. As far as the monster spawning goes, it suffers from the same problems of its predecessor, in that the creatures will only spawn in very specific locations, making it feel very scripted. In Amnesia: The Dark Descent, you were unable to look at the monsters that lurked around, as they would begin to chase you if you had stared long enough. Thankfully, this "you can't see me if I can't see you" function has been removed for the sequel. I feel that the monster design here was also much better in comparison, though there's only one creature in the entire game, apart from one incredibly short encounter. Despite the monster design being much more creative, I didn't really feel threatened by the enemies known as the pigmen. There's no real penalty for dying, so I just didn't really feel scared when I was chased. The pigmen also seemed to give up on chasing really quickly. As with the original, the environments I feel were quite well designed, though I do wish the levels were less linear as a whole. Most of the time I felt as though I was going from point A to point B. I recall having a bit more trouble when it came to figuring out where to go in the first game. Machine for Pigs seems to trade potential horror in exchange for storytelling, which shouldn't be too surprising given the developer. You will find various notes lying around the locations. On top of this, the main character will write down journal entries as you progress through the game. These journal entries usually provide a hint for the puzzle head, though most of the time I felt that it had made the game a bit too obvious and didn't leave room for the player to think. Also, none of the journal entries were voiced, which I found very odd given how story-driven the sequel appeared to be. There was never a point in which I felt true horror. In The Dark Descent, the chase during the water section made me feel like I was really being chased, but in Machine for Pigs, there was no such section. Also, there were only a handful of locations where the pigmen were hunting you down. It just didn't really feel like a horror game. I mean, I've been more scared during games that weren't intended to be horror games. To be honest, the game feels a bit like a mod for Amnesia, and not its own product. I still had fun playing through, but I just wish that it had done some new things to set it apart. It's much of the same with Amnesia's sequel, and I feel like a lot more could have been done with it.